Chapter 9. Surrender. Quote, "Surrender is a state of non-judgment about what is. What the universe offers up in each and every moment is perfect. To see that is a wonderful thing. When one sees from this perspective, there's a clarity that follows, a wisdom that flows, and a serenity that emanates." A favorite quote from my guides. As I write this chapter, I had a dream. While walking hip-deep in the water on the beach, a wave swept me off my feet. Realizing I had my bathing suit on, I didn't resist and floated happily along, letting the water sweep me down to where I cheerily chatted with some ladies on the beach. Then another swift current swept me along, and I philosophically went with it, not fighting it or trying to change anything about my situation. My dream illustrates what surrender is like. We surrender to what is happening in this moment now. We release the past and the future, and the clarity, wisdom, and serenity result. When the Christ consciousness enters your life, it's like this. You are still your personality, but the water, the wave, or the ocean itself is really in charge, as the greater you. Jesus clarifies what surrender means.
What often occurs is that surrender sounds like, well, surrender. Lift the white flag, we have failed. When in truth, surrender is ease and true attainment of living what is, here and now, in alignment with what has been created through law. This is surrender. This is the place from which all things are possible. The opposite of surrender is resistance. In resistance to what is, we have lots of friction that we stir up in our lives, making things much harder and draining our energy. So, in surrender, we have attained. We have succeeded in living the truth of what is. This doesn't mean we won't seek to change what is. It simply means that we accept that this is what is right here and now. And this is the platform from which we will move into the next moment of our reality.
Is surrender of the small self required to allow the expression of the higher self through?
What is required is surrender, yes, but not surrender to the ego-based human body system. No longer does one robotically respond to the ego. One is taking orders from the higher level. It is a shift in who is boss, but not necessarily a complete surrender of all expression of the human personality. One needn't worry about disappearing. One will only become a grander, more stable, more brilliant version of who one already is. For the connection to the one source will be stronger and more potent, so there will be less of a barrier to accessing this part of oneself.
The ego. I define the ego here as any part of myself that holds me from my true nature. Jesus, where does ego fit in?
Dear one, ego holds us from our true nature. So when we see this force clearly in our lives, we are empowered to step beyond it. We don't only step beyond it in the outward expression of our lives, but also in the constant inner turmoil the ego can create. The ego thrives on separation for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So, in seeing all as one, we essentially transform the world we see and make it uninhabitable to the ego. The ego then starves and ultimately loses its power to control us in negative ways. The ego may be useful at times to keep us surviving as individual human bodies, and that is its simple and healthy function, not as the master of our actions.
So in the new world we create of seeing one, We go where the ego can't follow us.
Yes, precisely. Not only that, the ego is left behind to wither away, so that all the energies it previously commandeered to maintain itself are redirected to the more functional use of Christ expression through the human form.
So I do need to see the ego to understand its ways and attitudes in order not to be tempted back into seeing separation over and over.
Yes, and the knowing of the self is easiest from seeing all as one. It's like this. The ego is camouflaged as yourself, your likes and dislikes, behaviors, judgments, and ideas about how life is. These are ego's trappings. If you then shine the light of oneness upon your life, then things become clear. You can see what part is ego and become clear of its control simply by seeing all as one. So the practice of seeing all as one both maintains your presence in a new world and renders evident the ego, which was previously camouflaged so well. This is what is meant by know thyself, something rendered possible through the perspective of truth or oneness.
In seeing all as one, we put our egos on notice, and maybe even give them the pink slip. There's no need to feel embarrassed for all the clever things your ego has done to help you be more fill in the blank than everyone else. We all do it. It is simply the way of the ego, and it has served its purpose. We can disarm it when we name it, admit it, and speak about its presence in our actions as they occur. When I first did this, I found myself having ego backlash, being more impatient, angry, and frustrated than ever. Don't be surprised or think that you are making no progress. It's actually a good sign, because the backlash indicates that the ego is feeling threatened. It makes the ego easier to see, too. One excellent tool for disarming the ego is to align with a higher purpose that motivates your actions and direction in life. When I sense the ego's presence, I realign with the surrendered self, the part of me that remains loving, open, humble, and with a higher purpose. Now, with a conscious act of will to realign with a higher purpose, sometimes I can free myself. Recognizing ego. Stop for a moment and think about how ego is present in your life. When or where do you see it most strongly? And why do you suppose that is? Dark versus light. The dark side of me exists. The light side of me exists. That's the yin and yang of life. Why do I wish I could just become light? Acceptance and self-compassion for this condition in me and in others is my bridge to wholeness. When I shrink from my dark side, I fragment myself. But when I realize that this is just the human condition and say, hey, dark and light, make up the whole, the meaning I make from darkness's presence is completely different. My dark side loses its power over me, and then too my attachment to the light lessens. And voila, I am united. Conscious attention. Conscious attention allows the Christ within to be expressed, as opposed to acting and reacting unconsciously. I sometimes think of conscious attention as cultivating the observer in my life. Jesus, what does conscious attention do?
Conscious attention allows the human individual that has chosen a path toward God expression to allow that expression to manifest through the individual's body.
So, conscious attention is necessary to manifest Christ consciousness. I'm confused, though. How do surrender and conscious attention harmonize?
Dear one, the relationship between surrender and conscious attention is simple. The first, surrender, allows the other to occur. Once one is surrendered, the state of that person's mind is in a neutral or receptive position. From this place, she has the ability to move energy and information from her higher self to her body-minded complex, and thus the possibility of conscious attention is made ready.
Surrendering to our divine internal guidance and to what this present moment holds makes conscious attention possible, and we become, as Jesus said before, more stable, more brilliant versions of who we already are. Jesus' invitation to Christ consciousness. Here Jesus offers the invitation for us to make a commitment to Christ consciousness.
We are one in our thoughts, words, and deeds when we have attuned our hearts to the one truth of who we are. It is only when our attunement wavers that we find suffering, separation, and dissolution of the human body. Wandering the halls of earth aimlessly, most people find little to be joyful for, since their thoughts, words, and deeds are centered around and created from an energy that is a faulty impostor of truth. In many disguises, this impostor tempts the unwary, offering baubles and beads when true gold is desired. Unsuspecting humans are mesmerized by their ancestors' mistakes into thinking that life is hard work and suffering when there is nothing further from the truth. What must come from this and other sources of the divine is a roadmap to the place beyond the mirage that earth has become. Not only is there timeless wisdom ready and wanting to share, but also the places at the table have been set, dear reader, awaiting your arrival. Cast off your glasses that hold you apart. Lay down your burdens that seem so many, and lift your sights to love, to loving the one, the true, the divinity in all that you see, and thus you will become all of this too. I am your Savior, only in that I have shown the way, so that you too may join the list and ranks of those who are truly free. Signed, Jesus Christ.
You can sign your name here too. I remember the many internal debates I had on the journey of surrender to a higher power. I had been trained to believe that the minute you surrendered to God, your life was no longer your own. I had no idea what I was surrendering to, and I didn't want to be surrendering in some Roger Milquetoast kind of way. What is it that kept me from surrender? I had no idea at the time, but I can now see that it was the cost of the parts of my life that couldn't accept my unity with all that is, and the decisions that perspective might have required. As you decide for yourself what the investment might be, depending on how far you are from unity consciousness, you will find that it may be a pittance or a king's ransom. It is well worth it either way. In seeing through the eyes of one, the world is completely and instantaneously transformed.